the Spotlight in Bensenville. My name is Frank DeSimone, Village President and your host for this episode. Today we'll be discussing the congressional activities in Illinois' 5th District with our guest, Congressman Mike Quigley, U.S. Representative for Illinois' 5th Congressional District. Mr. Quigley, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back. Hope all is well.
All is good. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you do. So give us a brief idea of what you're working on in D.C. right now.
Well, the last 2 weeks on the Appropriations Committee, we were the only members in D.C. attempting to fund the government. We, because of COVID, a lot of our schedules were contracted together. So normally what takes 2 months to do, we did in 2 weeks. So we passed all 12 bills that fund the federal government in that time period. And now we're going back, the full body, Monday through Friday until we get it done to fund the government. Now, what's going to be really important in the same time frame, we're going to be talking about supplementals. By supplementals, everyone's probably familiar with the CARES Act 1 and 2. 2 months ago, the House passed something called the HEROES Act, and Mitch McConnell decided to wait for a while to bring it before the Senate to see how things went. Given the economic downturn our country is unfortunately facing, given the rise of COVID and the hot spots that are taking place, we're hoping that he realizes it's time to act now. So if you'll let me, I'll give you a little perspective on that.
Absolutely.
The CARES Act provided several things, but the most important thing is it recognized that this is, first and foremost, a public health crisis. The public health crisis created the economic crisis, not the other way around. So CARES Act provided $150 billion to healthcare providers, including hospitals, because as you know also well, it put off elective surgeries.
Yes.
And it focused on the COVID. And what we're discovering in areas like Texas and Florida and others, the hospitals are at the edge of being overwhelmed. So that kind of need is still going to be out there. It also provided $150 billion for state and local governments. And again, as you know all too well, those revenue shortfalls and the economic downturn are putting a real stress on local governments and the critical services that they provide. And also CARES provided economic security for housing and food security. It extended and expanded unemployment benefits, which has been a lifesaver. It also provided, as you know, the stimulus checks that were very well appreciated, and a tremendous amount of money for through the SBA for small businesses who are hurt so dramatically by this. So for all those reasons, and that aid is running out, we need to do something else, because obviously this virus is going to last longer than that care will provide through healthcare and through economic needs. So the HEROES Act provided $3 trillion worth of assistance. A full third of that is targeted to, again, state and local governments. There isn't a local jurisdiction in the country that isn't being hurt by this. And what that means for all of us is police, fire, and water services, sewage, and so forth. All those essential services are at great risk. So it has to be part of this component. It also provides another $75 billion to help our healthcare providers with testing, tracing, and treatment. Unfortunately, that'll be needed for some time. Provided extension of unemployment benefits, assistance to small businesses, and of course, additional stimulus checks. Where we come out of this, what compromise is reached, absolutely essential to the residents of Bensenville and the entire state of Illinois.
Well, thank you for always fighting for our residents here in Bensenville and your district. But let's go back to your district a little bit. What are some issues that are important in your district?
the whole gamut of services that congressional offices provide. And I would begin by saying our number is 773-267-5926, quigley.house.gov. Our offices, while initially, like most, physically closed, we were still working and engaging with the citizens on an ongoing basis, and again, continue to do that. But your point's a good one. We're at a different state right now. When the crisis happened, we had to help repatriate our citizens. Many were stuck in Honduras, Peru, Prague. We had a hockey player stuck in Prague. We had many residents who couldn't get flights because of cancellations out of Asia with medical issues. So we had to work with the State Department, those governments, to charter airplanes to get everybody home. And another thing that's really changed and an issue for us is the need for small business assistance. Most of these small businesses simply don't have the capital to survive without revenue for 30 days, 60 days, and now it's been longer. And that opening has been painfully slow, and they're still operating on a fraction of their revenues. So that assistance and our trying to help those folks was important. Also, because of the expansion and extension of unemployment benefits, we have worked hand in glove with the Illinois Department of Employment to try to make sure people who were eligible can get those benefits and stay on them as long as they need to. As a village president, the world changed in the blink of an eye. Your world changed in what you had to do. Same is true for every member of Congress.
Yeah, it was. I hate to say the word joking with one of our constituents, and I said, when I ran for office, I didn't want a pandemic. I thought it was all about shaking hands and kissing babies. But I have to say, our residents here in Bensenville really banded together and supported our restaurants. Like we all made that call. Congress made that call. Everybody made that call to support local. And I think I'm very, very proud of what our residents have done and the support I've gotten from anybody we've called, like yourself. Anything we needed, we pretty much got, and I appreciate that from you guys.
Well, it's unfortunately going to continue. We've seen these numbers spike up. So call your favorite place for pizza delivery and many other great locations in Bensenville and throughout the region. They're going to need you now more than ever.
Absolutely. So tell us about some of your current committee assignments.
Well, I serve on two committees. I'm on the House Select Committee on Intelligence. So think spies, secrets, the 17 entities that make up the intelligence community, and the CIA, the FBI, and others, principally critically essential to keeping all of us safe. And as you know, they work with Homeland Security to provide critical information. For many, I think there's an amnesia about the threat we face on an ongoing basis. For those of us who lived and experienced 9/11, it's all too important and all too familiar. But the hacking that took place just this week, the Twitter accounts that were hijacked, demonstrate that no one is safe. And if anyone thinks, well, I'm just an average person, you're still exposed to this. Right. That cybersecurity issues that we focus on are so essential to your economic well-being. So people will have to continually be vigilant.
Right.
Obviously, we face a November election. In January of 2017, it was the universal agreement with a high degree of certainty of the intelligence community that the Russians attacked our democratic process. The first state where they hacked into the State Board of Elections was Illinois, exactly 4 years ago. And we need to maintain that vigilance. I remember Director Comey telling us that the Russians will be back. The fact is, they never left, and they're not the only ones who we have to face this challenge from. I think it's important to recognize the last time the integrity of our election process was challenged. This country spent $3.5 billion to buy all new election equipment after Gore Bush, hanging Chad, bad memories. I was the sponsor on the Appropriations Committee, my other committee, at this point of getting almost $1 billion to try new equipment, new software, and new training. Because about 40 of our states, the equipment is so old it can't even handle anti-hacking software. So whether you be a Democrat or Republican, Libertarian, Independent, it just doesn't matter. You want the process to be fair. And we need to make sure that we're prepared for that as well. So that's important work that we're focused on in DC, and the Intelligence Committee is focused on as well. Anti-terrorism, cybersecurity, and threats to the election process are just part of that.
I know you just mentioned that you sponsored some legislation before. Do you have any current sponsored or co-sponsored legislation going on right now?
You know, I think one of the critical things I'm working on is the potential for an infrastructure bill. I've been there almost 11 and a half years. And when I think of your jurisdiction and the infrastructure needs, I think of flyovers, intersection issues that facilitate speed, access, safety issues, roads and bridges, mass transit, the rolling stock necessary to keep this country moving, particularly in the safety issues in that, O'Hare Airport. So a major effort, that's something I want to get done this year. And I'm optimistic for the first time in over 11 years that we can. I think we get an infrastructure deal done. And I think it'll help every municipality and every individual in our country. So again, the House passed a $1.5 trillion project focused on all those needs. When we get closer with the Senate, I'll be sitting down with elected officials such as yourself and saying, what are the priorities for Bensenville and the surrounding areas? At that point, it's going to be really critical for there to be a cohesive, uniform voice from our local elected officials, getting the consultation as you do of your residents on what the needs are. And we can't dictate that from Washington, D.C. We need to know what works, what's the priorities, and how this all works. When we face the Great Depression, people think, well, we didn't want to spend money because it was a depression. But if we remember, FDR's plan was to spend, to drive the economy, to spur the economy. Given this downturn, we're going to absolutely have to do that. I think one of the great ways to do that is infrastructure. Because let's remember that many of the things that we built during the Depression are still being used. It's not so much an expenditure as an investment. And if we do it right, many of those investments will be enjoyed for generations to come. So I look forward to working with you and your constituents to get that done. A lot of the other measures we're working on are involving transparency, accountability, anti-corruption measures to, for us in Illinois, we in Illinois, we know all too often how this happens and how we need to change that picture. A couple of environmental measures we're dealing with, obviously, climate change. We're even dealing with legislation to protect birds, bird-safe buildings. We're the sponsor of legislation, which I think will pass, dealing with the big cat bill. Big cat bill is going to prevent people from keeping, believe it or not, people have tigers, lions, cheetahs in their yards and their apartments. There's a Netflix show about this, which we learned it's the inhumane treatment of animals. But and that's important, but there's a practical side to this. Unfortunately, there have been incidents where people who have kept big cats like tigers in their homes, and when they escape, the people who expose aren't just neighbors, they're first responders, and it's a tragic consequence as a result. So we're dealing with a lot of different measures. We just passed a law. The president signed into law that that deals with high levels of suicide among first responders, principally the police. In Chicago, that rate's about 68% higher than the rest of the country. I guess what I'm saying is we're facing a pandemic, and we're facing the issues relating to Floyd and many others, and impacting our country in a profound way. And that's important. But I don't want people to think that we can't do more than one or two things at a time. We can and we must, because there's usually more than one or two crises affecting our country. I think if we work together, we can get a lot done.
Absolutely. And on that note, I started taking some notes on my wish list that I'm gonna submit to you. And on the second half of that show you talked about, never seen a minute of it.
You know, the reason I can't watch it sounds bad, but you know those Humane Society commercials where they show animals that have been abused horribly?
Yes.
I just say, okay, write the check, I can't watch.
Yes.
I have a hard time watching animals
agree.
be treated inhumanely. Big cats belong in accredited institutions like refuges and zoos where they can be treated, not in somebody's roadside place where they can't care for these animals appropriately, and honestly, they're dangerous.
I agree with you. Tell us some of the services that you offer your constituents.
I think it's a new challenge given the circumstances dealing with the virus and the economic turndown. I can't stress enough, again, 773-267-5926. We are functioning fully. So there are issues relating to travel that we can help with, given this, the virus, visas that relate to this, passport issues. It's a lot harder to travel. Quarantines that are going to be put in place are going to need our help. Glad to help with that. People sometimes have problems with veterans benefits, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, as they reach different stages of their life. They often call upon our office to help. And frankly, they can just call and say, what's going on in DC, or help me understand. There were a lot of calls and requests that came when we passed the CARES Act. When will I get my stimulus check? How do I apply for unemployment benefits? Because, as you know, there were people, gig employees, independent contractors, who for the first time could qualify for unemployment. A lot of them needed to walk through the process. We'll take as much time as anybody needs, because this is absolutely essential. In my youth, I worked for a local alderman, and as you know, it's a very similar. Services are on an individual basis. Everybody's situation is different. But my message to my constituents, no matter what we're doing in DC, the most important thing I can do is help each individual with their particular problem. They're as important as anything else that we do. So feel free to call, ping on our social media, and let us know. Or just tell us how you're feeling and what you want us to focus on.
Before we take a break, one more time, how can we find out, how can we get into contact with your office?
Again, 773-267-5926 or at quigley.house.gov.
You have a couple more minutes to stay with us while we take this break?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Staying connected is important, and at the Village of Bensenville, it has never been easier to keep up to date with what's happening around town. Whether on your phone, desktop, or tablet, the Village of Bensenville website is your go-to community resource, so you'll stay connected at home, in the office, or on the go. Join us on social media. Visit the Bensenville homepage and click on the Facebook icon. This will take you to the Bensenville Facebook fan page. Once there, click the like button and add us to your newsfeed. To follow us on Twitter, visit the Bensenville homepage and click on the Twitter icon. This will take you to the Bensenville Twitter page. Once there, click the follow button and add us to your Twitter feed. and receive regular community updates. For email and cell phone notifications, click on the Notify Me button. This will take you to the Notify Me dashboard. Add your email address and/or cell phone number at the top of the page. Then select which service you would like to receive updates from. Click on the envelope icon for email alerts and on the phone icon for phone alerts. You can choose one, the other, or both. Tune into our public access cable shows and board meetings. Choose a current program from the Multimedia tab down on the home page. Bensenville Community Television is also web streamed 24 hours a day. To pay your Bensenville utility bill online, just click on the Online Payments button, then follow the instructions provided on our secure payment site. If you have any problems, concerns, or questions to tell the village, please visit the Report a Concern Center. Through the YourGov application, you can explain your issue and track its progress from submission to completion. Issues submitted through YourGov are forwarded directly to the responsible department. Staying connected is important, and at the Village of Bensenville, it has never been easier to keep up to date with what's happening around town. On your phone, desktop, or tablet, the Village of Bensenville website is your go-to community resource, so you'll stay connected wherever you are.
Hi, and welcome back to Spotlight in Bensenville. My name is Frank DeSimone, Village President, and your host for this episode. Today we'll be discussing the congressional activity in Illinois' 5th District with our guest, Congressman Mike Quigley, U.S. Representative for Illinois' 5th Congressional District. Welcome back, sir.
So glad to be here.
All right, we'll jump right into this. So why is it important for people to fill out the census?
Yeah, look, everything the federal government does in terms of assistance is tied to formulas as to population. So that means how much money you get to build roads, how much money you all get for healthcare in Illinois. Think of a service from first responders on, education, absolutely tied to being counted. It also gives us a wealth of information of how to better serve the communities. And finally, there's so many more things I could talk about. The representation we have in Congress is tied to this. How many electoral votes we have, which shows how much influence you have as a voter, but there's a formula that's tied to how many members of Congress come from the state of Illinois. Therefore, how much influence, how much power the state has to control its own destiny. So be heard, be counted, tell your friends if there's those who you think might have a hard time or haven't heard about it, connect them to this and let us know if we can help in that vein.
Absolutely. So obviously having to commute to DC via air travel, how's that been for you?
It's interesting. The most important bill I've worked on this session was the CARES Act because it was so critical. I mean, we needed aid immediately to people who were thrown out of work, how to help small businesses, and we needed money to given to the hospitals that, because they were overwhelmed and they didn't have elective surgeries. They were getting no revenue. So we found out we need to get to DC the next day. Well, as you know, normally American, United, Southwest, they have flights every hour. Mm-hmm. Now think about all of them being canceled and you need to get there.
Right.
So I was ready to rent a car and drive through the night. Turns out American had one flight that we all had to get on to get there. So, first, especially when you're flying, you got to follow the rules. Wear a mask, shouldn't be a problem. I do have faith in the circulation system that they have, but it's a mixed bag. I've been on flights that were packed, and I've been on flights where there's 5 or 6 people. So obviously that's going to have a dramatic impact on air travel and the economic well-being of our airlines, but a mixed bag. There are some members, because they have underlying health conditions, who have to vote by proxy. I want to be there. I'm in good shape, thank the Lord, healthy. So I'm going to keep going back and forth. but it is a challenge. And the reason we don't just stay in DC is weekends like this one, I need to be out there. I need to be in the district focusing on my constituents' needs. But a lot fewer flights, a lot tougher to schedule and make sure we get there on time. We're more than often leaving the day before just because we want to make sure we get there in time.
Let's lighten up again a little bit. I know you play hockey often, and I know you play at the edge. Have you been able to get out there at all?
We started, most of the rinks are starting to open up in Illinois. For a guy who plays once or twice a week, that wasn't soon enough. So we've been going down to Indiana to skate. I actually played last night at the Cube in Hammond. So looking forward to getting back out there at Bensenville. You know that one of the reasons we skate at the edge was that we had an annual fundraiser to help a very important charity. And we want to get back out there again in an annual FBI versus the police department game. So looking forward to that happening. A wise man once told me that at some point in our life, to stay in good health, you have to continue to work out. But it's really hard to do just sitting on a treadmill watching the news on TV.
Right, I agree.
His advice was you need a rabbit, something to chase, right? Greyhound dogs on a track just sniff and lay down. We're greyhound dogs, maybe. And to compete, the analogy is we need to chase something. And whether that's a little white golf ball, a basketball, a volleyball, a 16-inch softball, for me, it's a little black rubber disc that I chase around. I love the game more than it loves me, but I encourage everyone to get out there and do something safely, whether it's riding a bike or walking, whatever your age. It's very important now to stay in as good a shape as possible to protect yourself.
I always like to end my interviews on a positive note. So what's something that you are looking forward to do?
One of the things I really look forward to, what I was looking forward to is eating outside my favorite local restaurants. That's coming back and starting to play hockey. Right now, I think a lot of folks are in the same boat. You can't be with your family, right?
Right.
I have an older mom. I know many of your viewers have the same situation. And they understand, but they don't understand that because I travel, I can't be there. I can't hug my mom. I couldn't on Mother's Day. I had to do Zoom communication. I look forward to being with friends and family in the way that we constantly did. The best we can do now is to stay close socially. And I'm looking forward to returning, being with my friends, family, constituents. We can shake hands and hug each other and move forward together.
I'm looking forward to shaking your hand, sir. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the ice. But before we go, one more time, how can people find out some more information from your office?
773-267-5926, quigley.house.gov. Folks, stay close, but not too close. Thanks for having me on.
Congressman, thank you very much for being on our show. We'll talk to you soon. I'll have that list ready for you.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this time, and we'll see you next week on Spotlight in Bensenville.